just goes down. Aiden Hutchinson, he'll roll up on you folks and let you smell his cologne. I tell you what. All right, welcome in. Still a couple minutes left in the in Saturday. We're coming at you here following Michigan and Iowa, the Big Ten championship game, 42-3, the final. There's Jim Scarcelli. I'm Dennis Fithian. We're ready to go here and talk all about this one. Michigan wins their first Big Ten championship since 2004, and they're on their way to the college football playoffs. It's it's pretty good. It's a great day to be a Michigan fan, that's for sure.
I'm so happy for those players. Every one of those guys are going to have a big old ring on their finger. All those coaches will have a big old ring, and ain't no one going to ever take that away. My phone is getting blown up from all my buddies that I played with, and there's a lot of happy, fired-up Wolverines. The Wolverines were represented there in Indy, the biggest crowd they've ever had. And we had a lot of Wolverines fans out there supporting our guys, and it was just a beautiful overall program. Everybody mattered. Everything was a factor. Every coach, every player, our strength coach, everything mattered to win this football game. And we just out-programmed them from the top down. We needed everything to get it done like that.
Yeah, and you know what? They had some big plays in the first half that helped them have a little bit of cushion going into halftime. You know, Corum had the 67-yard run, and you know what? Donovan Edwards, I didn't know, that guy, you couldn't have thrown a better pass than he did on that double pass to unleash that one, that he did, that went 75 yards. I mean, that's a real lightning bolt there. The game wasn't over, but there was a part about, wow, man, Michigan is bringing it. Michigan is dialed in, and the Hawkeyes, man, they were playing it really conservative, man, as conservative as you possibly can. And then, Michigan went to work on them in the second half to make this a 42-3 game. They had to pour it on there in the second half. That selection committee, Michigan wants to be number one, and you have to make your case. And across the country, I don't know how much they get influenced when they're sitting there in the hotel and they're thinking about it. I think a lot of it goes to TV ratings on what they're thinking about with that college football selection committee. And Alabama and Georgia, who played earlier in the day, everybody wants to play Cincinnati, Scar. Everybody wants to play Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. All three of those teams are going to be lining up fighting to see if they can get Cincinnati. So I know Jim, probably didn't want to throw the ball with 5 minutes left, having JJ run around and like we did. But I think you got to do it. And he was fighting for that, to try to get that number one spot. But so many good things, man. So many guys that played well. But Denny, when you look at this game, it was a fight. It was a struggle in the first half. I told you that their defensive line would be better coached than Ohio State. We had a hard time running the ball in the first half. We only had 2 plays. We had the trick play. In fact, I watched Donovan Edwards play in high school, and he was played some quarterback. They had him play quarterback at times in high school, and and I've seen him throw the ball. He's just an all-around athlete. But that's really all we had in the first half. And I text you when we had our big run. Again, JJ was in the game. We had that big run. Those 2 linebackers ran out of there, and they were honoring JJ instead of being in their gap. And Corum hit that long run. But that's all we had in the first half. They know how to defend a lot of our stuff. And luckily Gaddis had some creative stuff that you just can't pound it into. Sometimes you just can't pound it. You got to have some other things to throw a curveball. But it was, the first half was tough, but second half we got things rolling.
Yeah, there's BP getting in there right off the bat. Finally, Big Ten champs go blue. Bubba, nice job there, Bubba. Yeah, Big Ten champs for sure. Yeah, to your point there, a couple of the notes, Michigan had the Corum 67-yarder, then they had the 75-yard double pass, and then they did have an end around to A.J. Henning that I had down for 36 yards. Those were 3 consecutive plays. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot. In fact, they averaged under 3 yards per play otherwise than that. So you're going into halftime, and I was playing it really conservative, but Michigan does have the 14-3 lead. So you had to feel pretty good about where Michigan was at, considering that they had the lead, playing with the lead, and then the way they came out in the third quarter was pretty good. They took that drive down 10 plays, 82 yards, and ended up getting a score there. Pretty big deal to come out, stopping Iowa and then scoring in the third quarter like they did.
Yeah, we took our first drive down in the third quarter and scored, right? The opening drive. That was huge. But Danny, if I'm coaching that team, and I'm up 14-3, and I know they were moving it, this, that, or whatever, but the bottom line that made me so comfortable and confident was the way our defense was playing. If you're going to beat Iowa, you better at least neutralize their run game. We talked about this the other day. And we pretty much took their run game and stuck it where the sun don't shine. There he is. There's our boy right there.
Yeah, he was holding up that glass football right there that they got. That's pretty nice. There he is again. Take a look at him.
Yeah, he won't take no credit. He'll give all the credit to everybody else. Watch what he says. I know how he thinks.
Oh yeah, he's going to talk about his seniors.
That's what a good leader does. But Denny, our run defense was outstanding. I mean, outstanding. And it was and I told you we'd probably see the 5-2. Remember I told you on Thursday.
That's right.
And that's what we did. We had an extra defensive lineman in the game. And I told you the bottom line beating this team, the guys that would have to play good would be Hinton and Mozzie Smith. And they were outstanding. Those two were outstanding. And you know who else was real good? Who is the third defensive lineman in the game? They had Jenkins in there.
Yeah.
He hadn't played much. He had a bad game. He wasn't that good against Michigan State, and they kind of forgot about him for a couple weeks, but he played great tonight. All 3 of those guys are coming back. So that's a great thing. All 3 of them young defensive linemen are coming back. And then they had Harrell in there, 32 on the edge. Again, he hasn't played because the scheme didn't, it wasn't the best. The other teams we were playing, we really weren't utilizing his scheme as well, his technique as much, his qualities as much. But anyway, the scheme was great. The players executed. We took the run game and just shoved it. And anytime you get Iowa having to throw it, our secondary was outstanding. Our coverage was great. Turner was good. Gray had one of his best games.
Yes.
Our safeties were sound. I got a little frustrated with our safeties. We brought safety blitzes, and they got beat by the quarterback a couple times. We got beat on a bootleg there, but I thought our coverage was tight. It all starts with run defense. You got to make them one-dimensional, and that's what we were able to do.
Yeah, I really, the defensive line, you're right about that. I thought the linebackers, just like you, going up in there, whether it's Colson came up there, Michael Barrett, those guys, they talk about setting the edge. Joe Klatt, I didn't think the color analyst had his greatest game. They were the first half, but there was a point that he made in the second half when he said that he thought McDonald expanded at least to try because the Iowa wanted to roll their quarterback out, and Michigan was trying to take that away a little bit in the second half. That seemed to be a nice adjustment there by McDonald. But, that the Iowa Hawkeyes offense wasn't very dangerous. And, man, they were playing it so tight to the vest and, just trying to keep it close so they could make some plays there. And Michigan's defense, a couple guys, here and there got beat. But, man, in the end, they started feeling it and really started getting after it. And you take a step back here, and you think about it. This is the first team that went from unranked in the preseason to go to the college football playoff. It's the 2021 Michigan Wolverines.
No kidding. Wow.
Oklahoma State had that chance because they were unranked too, but of course they got beat today by Baylor on the last. They had a chance there on the last play of the game.
Well, that tells you how much guys like you and me and the media know, right? Because the media picks that stuff, and sometimes they get it wrong. The same thing, with the team I played on 1985. We weren't ranked at all. We finished number 2 in the country. But I hate to keep saying about McDonald, but I just loved some of the things he was doing schematically. And Joel was right, because they were beating us on that boot pass, and he made some adjustments, and because they were pretty predictable when they were going to run that boot pass. But that's a sign of a smart coach. He made some good adjustments, and but we took away a lot of their best stuff, man. Their zone play. I was so worried about their zone play. I watched them run that zone play against Maryland. Maryland never stopped it. They put 50 points on Maryland. So, I didn't know that we were going to shut it down like we did. I really didn't know. But so much of this victory, so much of our ability to play such good defense, Denny, don't forget the fact that we run this stuff and our defensive players get a good look at it in practice. And it was obvious that our guys know how to play the zone play and defend it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. If there was one thing at the half, Michigan had the 2 big plays and they were up 14-3, but Cade was a little bit, like Donovan Edwards had more yards than Cade McNamara at the half, and he did throw the one a little bit behind Ald and ended up, being picked. And there was another throw, I think, to Cornelius Johnson on a 3rd down, maybe it was a 2nd down. And, he was out there, and, maybe Kojo could have made the catch. It went off his fingertips there, but he was a little bit off. So you're thinking maybe a little bit more. I know some of the fans were thinking, hey, a little bit more McCarthy here because because Cade didn't have it. But he really got from, if you wanted to say he had a subpar first half, you look at the quality of the passes that he had. He started zipping them in there, and he started throwing some darts there in the second half on some of those touchdown drives. I mean, he really started slinging it and got in a groove. So if you were disappointed with some of his throws in the first half, I think it was understandable. But you have to look at those quality of the throws in the second half there and give it up to number 12. And you know what? You give it up to McCarthy too, because he had you think about the touchdown run with Corum. I mean, he ran all the way down the field there. That was pretty. What'd you see on that play with the quarterback down there all the way down to the 5-yard line when he was going in, Corum, for that touchdown?
Oh, on the our first score.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Denny. Like I said, he when he's in the game, these defenses they're so worried about quarterback keep, and that was just great effort by him. But you could see, if you really watch that play closely, those linebackers widened out to honor the quarterback. Meanwhile, Corum ran right by him. But yeah, it was great to see that hustle there. But you're right, McNamara. He was behind on all the interception, and our defense responded. Those sudden change, we got him stopped. But he had that our third score in the second half. That dime he threw to Shoemaker on that seam route. That was right. Right in the chin, man. That was a beautiful pass. But you're right. He was really accurate in the second half. And Gaddis called some good plays, because it was a tight game in starting the second half. And then we had that, I think we were like 3rd and 12. He called that quarterback draw. Remember that, Denny?
Well, let me ask you, because Joel Klatt, now he said that he got the linebacker out of there in the middle. I don't think that the idea was, hey, let's get the linebacker out there and run McNamara. Now, that's what ended up happening. He went for 14 yards. But do you think, because even Gus Johnson said, hey, do you think that was the design and that was the idea all day long? Now, I think if McCarthy was in there, maybe you would think about that. But do you really think that maybe it was an option off of that? But I can't believe that they were thinking, yeah, let's get McNamara here and let's get him to vacate the middle and let him take off. Do you think that was an option on that?
We have run that play before. We ran it before this year. And they probably knew that when we go empty, because that's what we did. We had one back in the backfield and the back flared out. So they probably knew what Iowa does, what their adjustment would have been in the empty formation. And it worked. It worked out perfectly. The linebacker flew out of there to cover the back and adjust them however they were going to adjust. But the middle was wide open. And, that's coaching. That's what you do. That's why these guys are looking at film. They want to know, how do you think they're going to adjust when I'm in this formation? How will they adjust when we go in motion? How will they adjust with this, that, or whatever? And the defensive coaches are doing the same thing. We're trying to figure out, if I do this, what will they do? So there's a lot involved with coaching, trying to get the edge to put your players in positions to win.
Yeah, well, it was fabulous. The 67-yard run to get Michigan on the board. The 75-yard pass was a thing of beauty, double pass. I mean, you sit around practicing those things all week long, and then you know how it looks in practice. But you see, I mean, that was it was a great throw to Edwards, and then Edwards and the guy. I'm surprised there wasn't a targeting penalty at least thrown. I mean, the guy left his feet, launched and hit Edwards in the face with the crown of his helmet, and he still, I mean, you couldn't have thrown him. I don't care who, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes couldn't have thrown a better ball than Donovan Edwards there. That was some nice information. You said that you saw him, get a little quarterback run when he was in high school, but that was awesome. There was a bunch of plays. Roman Wilson, he was good, and then he got hurt, and then he came back, but he's a heck of a player. Schoonmaker, when he's in there, all had the big play against Penn State. And he could have had that one that was a little bit behind him that ended up being an interception. But man, he down the sideline late in that game. There was a perfect pass from McNamara. Of course, he caught the one-hander. But Schoonmaker, man, that guy, he's a monster. Like, he's as big as you, Scar. His arms are tree trunks. And he's demonstrated here that he's got some pretty good hands. He had the 2 touchdowns against Indiana, but man, he's a giant. He's a gigantic target, and he's demonstrated that he's got some pretty big hands. So tight ends, wide receivers here, and the offensive line. You're right about Iowa. Whatever they were doing with the run defense, they did let the big one go there with Corum. But then after that, in the second half, Michigan, the 10-play, 82-yard drive was Michigan's first drive in the third quarter. It ended up, going down there for a touchdown. Pretty impressive all the way through to go over there, to establish that and get the 21-3 lead.
Yeah, if there's a team in the Big Ten who has 2 tight ends as good as Michigan's, I don't believe it. I think we've got, as a tandem, Schoonmaker and all, those guys are outstanding. They're tough. They're blockers. They're not imposters. Some of these teams have, imposters. They don't block anybody. Those guys will block. They one of our first plays of the game, we led on an isolate. We haven't shown that. We had Alls in at fullback. We ran a lead isolation play. Both those guys will block. Both of them can catch. They'll block in the open field. They'll block defensive linemen. They'll block linebackers. I love watching those guys play. I like our tight ends are well coached, and they're tight end you, baby. I think we do a great job with our tight end. I mean, Coach Harbaugh he's got a lot of guys that he had at Stanford that are still in the NFL. So
yeah, good point. And you know what? You go to a turning point, maybe you would go to the double pass that ended up, Michigan, getting up at that point 14-0. But I keep going to that first drive that Michigan had in the second half where they went up to 21-3. But if you look at Iowa's second drive in the third quarter, I mean, they're down 21-3. It's desperation time. They come up with 14 plays and go 60 yards, but they go for it on a 4th and 3, and Michigan just snuffs them out in a play that never really had a chance. I'll tell you, if they score there, they're back in the game. I mean, it's 21-10 at that point. It's still a lot of time in the third quarter. So scoring, and then they go on the long drive that sucks so much time out there to not be able to get into the end zone there. It really felt like Michigan was in a great position then to win this game when they stopped them on that 4th down. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Red zone defense. We used to work so much on red zone defense, and it's obvious that Michigan works a ton of red zone defense. I mean, look at the first half. They drove it down, and he missed the first field goal, right? And then they drove it down again. They kick another one. And then later in the game, they drove it down again. We get them stopped on 4th. I mean, how many times were they down in there and all they got were 3 points? And that's work, man. That's coaching, that's players, that's technique. Our technique is good. If you ask me the turning point in that football game, for me, watching it was when I realized after a couple series that we were going to stuff their run game. That they were going to have old Spencer beat us or that other guy, and they didn't have the skill at the receiver position. I don't think, to be a real problem for us to cover. I think that's why our secondary had such a great day, because those aren't Alabama receivers out there. Put it that way. Those aren't Ohio State receivers. Those aren't Michigan receivers. So it was easier for us to shut it down. But for me, when I look at this game, it was all about stopping their run game more than anything, because there was a real comfort level with me and my buddies as we were texting, a lot of my former defensive teammates. It's like, we're taking their run game and sticking it. And as long as we don't turn the ball over, we were going to be in good shape. And because that's all they got with 3 points.
Yeah, the tight end was pretty good for Iowa. A lot of people with Michigan being able to put some points on late there, wanting the college football selection committee to put Michigan number one. I think there's an outside chance that they would put them there, but I also think that, they're thinking about New Year's Day and they're thinking about the matchup. And do they want a rematch? If Alabama and Georgia was this great game of the fourth quarter, that was some classic, that you thought, man, that is so awesome. Well, it wasn't that. Alabama got up, pretty much ran away with that game. Georgia got a touchdown or two late, so certainly one, to make it look like it was a little bit closer. But Alabama ran away with that game. I don't think, if you're thinking about juice or excitement, you're thinking, do they really want that rematch? I don't think that. I think the selection committee sitting in there, it's going to be really easy. They're going to say, we don't want the Alabama-Georgia rematch in the semifinal. We just saw it, and what we want to see is, Michigan-Georgia or Michigan-Alabama. I think they want to see Michigan-Georgia, Alabama-Cincinnati. Those are going to be, I think, the biggest draw, biggest viewership. I think that's what they feel. Now, you could say, well, that's not right. Michigan should be one, and because of that, they should be able to get Cincinnati. That's not how they're working it here. They're going to look to see what game they feel like the two games that are going to be the most attractive for viewers, and I think that's the way they're going to go. Whether you like that or not, I don't know if you like that. I don't think are you jumping up and down? Are you hot at all about that? Now, they'll probably just keep them 2, and then they could just put Cincinnati 3, or Georgia, they could put at 3. However you want to do it. I'll still, I'll make the case for Michigan being 1, but if they do that, they're still going to have to play. They're going to have to play Georgia.
Danny, I had this debate with my buddy. He's a Spartan fan, old Spartan grad. And after, Michigan had lost to Michigan State, we were above them. And his argument was, well, they beat us, blah, blah, blah. They should be ahead. I said, well, listen, I'm an old high school coach, and there's many times I would have rather had played the number 1 seed when we made the high school playoffs. You follow me?
Sure.
So I think that the number 1 seed should get the worst team. Those are my views of the thing, that you should don't worry about all these other issues, but you need to reward number 1 by giving them the easiest game. Now, if people are going to involve all this other kind of, well, they already played or this, that, or whatever, then just say that it's about ratings and it's about other issues other than being fair to number 1. So I don't know if that's going to be work against Michigan, where they wouldn't get the number 1 seed, because if they've already decided Cincinnati is 4.
I don't think they just look at. I don't think they're sitting out there saying, let's think about who should be number 1, and then let's give them the easiest draw. Look at Cincinnati sticking out like a sore thumb. All 3 of these teams would like to play Cincinnati. It feels like they're not a Power 5 team. Not that it's a bye to the championship game, but it feels like that's the matchup that everybody wants. Everybody. So should Michigan, you can sit around and say it any way you want, but when they're sitting in there, they want New Year's Eve. And you know what? They haven't had the greatest numbers because it is New Year's Eve, and they're trying to get it off New Year's Eve, but it is New Year's Eve this year. And they want the most attractive game that they think is going to draw the biggest ratings. And we can bemoan it. We can sit here and say, oh, what are these? But we've already seen that playoff committee, that they pick whoever they want for whatever reasons they want. They're not sitting over there, thinking about, their main reason that they sit in there is the attractiveness of the game. You could say anything else that you want, or you could have anybody that was in that selection committee say anything else. But I've seen it, and I know that's what they do. I know that they pick whoever they want. So, I mean, it's fun to talk about here for 24 hours. But, I'll put my money on, Michigan playing Georgia. Now, maybe they'll put Michigan 1, but they're not going to they'll put Georgia 4. But more than likely, it's going to be Michigan 2 and Georgia 3, with Alabama being able to get Cincinnati in that first game. And you know what? Hey, Michigan, I don't think needs to take the approach of just being happy that they're going to be there. And Georgia's got this great run defense, but you saw what Alabama was able to do on them. Do you think Michigan has a chance against Georgia? What are your thoughts?
Well, they're both. Georgia's run game, I thought, was a little better. They're off. Both of their offensive lines are huge. It's going to be. It would be a lot like playing Ohio State. Both of those teams, although Georgia has a better run game than Ohio State. Alabama does a little bit of both, but their run game isn't as good, I think, as that team we faced with Najee Harris. Their quarterback he's different than the Mac Jones. He runs around. He makes a lot of plays with his feet.
Yes, he does.
Denny, we got a lot of time to talk about that game. There's a couple things I want to. I'm just because I don't think we played our best game, but tonight, by no means do I think there's a lot of mistakes we made. When I really looked at our offensive line, we missed a lot of blocks. We weren't executing like we had in the past. I was frustrated. I kept rewinding it, looking at things and saying, why is, we were making mistakes that we hadn't made. But we did not play our best game, and we still buried these guys. But how about special teams? We didn't talk about special teams. There were some things that were really important in this game. Our punter was outstanding, punting out of our end zone, and then our coverage team was great to change field position. I just thought we needed to mention our punter. He was pretty darn good tonight.
Well, let me jump in on the special teams. Iowa missed a field goal right out of the gate, a nice easy one, which was big. The other part is I like A.J. Henning, and I see this happen a lot in the NFL. These punt returners, they stand on the 5-yard line, and they're fielding these punts inside the 5. Like, let it go. Why are you fielding, especially if you're calling a fair catch? I mean, if you want to catch it and try to take it up the field like Henning did late in that game around the 5-yard line. But Scar, if it bounces, the opposing team's got to the coverage teams, they got to be right down there. If they're getting ready to catch it, well, okay. But you know what? Most of the time, you're going to get out of the way, and that ball's going to go into the end zone, and you're going to pick up like 17 yards. And it's not just Henning, it's not just Michigan. I'm surprised both at the pro and college level that these guys are down there inside the 5 fielding the punts. What's your
I did not understand that. All my years as a player and coach, it was always stand on the 10-yard line. And I was so frustrated when he caught that ball on the 3-yard line. I'm like, what are you doing? That was really one of the only mistakes we made in the kicking game, was catching the ball on the 3-yard line. And then later on in the game, they punted the ball where he could have caught it around the 50 and he let it hit the ground. So I was a little frustrated with that, but we did have some returns to change field position a little bit. I think in general, our punt return team is good. I think they're very well coached. Our punt coverage team is good. And they
blocked the punt late in that game.
And then I got the block punt on here too, which is, And all that stuff is good, Danny, that the opponent has to see that these guys are willing to block punts. They've done it, they've got the trick plays. They got the Statue of Liberty. They got the double pass. They got the flea flicker. Believe me, as a former coach, all that stuff, you just hate it because you got to work on it. You got to at least show it to your team at least once during the week. And all those BS plays, they take away from stopping the opponent's best stuff. So, and we'll have all those bag of tricks for our bowl game, and we're going to need them.
Yeah, you know what? I'm pretty impressed. So you get to this point. Michigan loses Ronnie Bell in that first game, and then the whole group of wide receivers, and we didn't see much of Andrell Anthony, but, he came on, of course, to the Michigan State game, had that 93-yarder, and then, talked about Roman Wilson getting hurt and then coming back. But, he's a factor. Henning, they're working him in there. I'd like to see him, develop more as a pass catcher, but obviously with the ball in his hands, he's very dangerous. And you see some of the, I think Cordell Patterson from the Falcons, or how San Francisco's using Deebo Samuel. They put him into the backfield. I wouldn't be surprised to see Michigan doing some of that with Henning. But, last year Michigan had 4 running backs in there. They had Charbonnet, and they were trying to go with this 4-headed monster. And it worked good for the Minnesota game, but nobody ever was able to get into a rhythm or anything else. Well, the ground and pound with both Haskins and Corum, obviously it was effective, but then being able to get Donovan Edwards in there and his pass catching ability, he is flash, and he's deadly. He's a dangerous player. Being able to incorporate him into the offense, and then I'll go over the top, Scar. Something else that you said, I thought late in the year that they should have not scrapped putting J.J. McCarthy in there, but I wanted to just see Cade McNamara. I didn't want to see much of J.J. McCarthy, but they stuck with that. And let
me ask you, Denny, are you a believer now? If you were coaching that team, would you play J.J. Like they have, or would you play him less or more? What would you do if you were the coach?
Well, I wouldn't have against Ohio State, and I wouldn't. But you know what? He made so many plays against Ohio State. When you see it, you can have all the beliefs in the world about it, but then when you see it out there, you have to say, well, it was effective. And then back today, it's like he can run the ball. You saw him when they ended up before Schoolmaker had that one-hander, and they ended up going up 35-3. No, actually, they went up 28-3. JJ had a couple runs there at the beginning. They do have to not only scheme for him. He's a pretty good player, and in a pinch, you might need him for some things there. Plus, it keeps him. I think that is he going to be the factor if they beat Georgia or something else? It's worked for them. It's dangerous, I think, a little bit, but it's worked for them. And, that credit has to go to the coach. It has to go to the QBs as well.
Yeah. If I was coaching that team also, we've talked about the Rutgers quarterback trap. You remember how they ripped us with that play a little bit in there? Penn State, the quarterback, the inside run. John Harbaugh runs the hell out of that play with Lamar Jackson. Yeah. We've defended that play. I wish they would put that play in with Cade McNamara, because it would really open things up for us offensively even more.
With JJ or Cade?
Both of them.
Okay, both.
What it does is it really puts the defense in conflict, that one play. Because a lot of our perimeter run plays, it's normally a fake run off of that, and then they run the quarterback in there. I don't know if you remember early in the second half, we were deep on our end. Their defensive end made a play on Corum. He got him for a negative play. You remember that play, Denny?
Yeah.
I'd like to show you that if we had the quarterback keep off of that action, that's why that kid made that play, because he didn't honor quarterback keep off that same trap action. I'd have to show it to you so you could understand it, but that's why he got away with that, because he knows we don't run that play with that quarterback. That's why that defensive end blew up field, and he didn't even bother honoring that trap. I would put that play in if I was coaching, but maybe he doesn't want to get him hit. But he's athletic enough where you can still rip him for 5-6 yards out of the spread formation with that formation. But no, I like running. I like running the quarterback a little bit. It puts defense in conflict. It's one more. And again, I would find stuff with McNamara too.
Yeah, well, let's look at the total picture here. For Jim Harbaugh when he came in 2015, this is what people thought. Like, hey, it's Michigan's time to get back and to beat Ohio State, and to get to the Big Ten championship game, and to get a chance once in a while at the college football playoff. And then we know I find it, for people that like great stories, like, I know you stuck with Harbaugh the whole way, but I didn't. There were a lot of people, even, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, that were like, look, it's just not going to happen here. Let's move on. I kept saying, even after the 62-point affair, and even the following year, that, like, look, I still think he's the best guy for the job, even though it's been a very disappointing year against Ohio State. I thought last year that it looked like he was defeated, and the team doesn't look like it responded. I don't know how you factor in the pandemic and all that, but it looked to me like it was over. But you know what? He sure did look. He came back, freshened up. I don't know if it's something of his personal life, or he just came in with a bounce in his step. Talking about maybe it's the energy of the staff that he pointed to, and these guys having fun. Whatever it is, you got to put so many things in there to, you turn this and this coach and whatever it was, they sure did come together, and to have them turn this thing around. It's a great story. Is a long way to go about this, having Harbaugh back and get Michigan up there, right in the Final Four in the playoff where everybody wants them. So it's really, I don't know about remarkable, but it's a great story.
Yeah. I think I explained my formula that, sometimes I think he hired some really good coaches. I think offensively, we've been running that stuff for 3 years now. Our tight ends are experienced. Our big tackles are both experienced. Our center was better. We finally got I don't want to knock some of those quarterbacks we've had in the past, but we're not doing this with Brendan Peterson, and we're not doing this with Joe Milton either. We're just not. And in recruiting, that's a huge talent for the guy in charge. Evaluating players. Jimmy Johnson was great as a pro coach, but college coaches, I dealt with a lot of them. They come into school and they evaluate kids, and a lot of them had different questions that they would ask about certain kids. And, we finally hit it right on a quarterback. So we got a quarterback. We got the offensive line that has a lot of experience. We got the offensive coordinator in his third year, knowing our system. We got the physical run play. We got the speed and space. It's all blended in. We can do all of that stuff. We finally got the defensive coordinator. We're not doing this if he doesn't make a change at defensive coordinator. We're not, Denny. We're not hanging that trophy up. He made the decision, and then you got to make and hire the right guy. If you hire the wrong assistant coach, you're done. That's so important. That's more important than recruiting 2 or 3 bad kids if you hire the wrong coach. But Sharon Moore, great job as an offensive line coach with all those kids back. And then, then you got Hutchinson, these guys all coming back. Ross, having a great year but everything came together, and then we didn't have injuries. And I'm knocking on wood, Danny, because I don't want to jinx anything. But we didn't have any, we lost Ronnie Bell, but we had so much depth there. But we didn't have any huge injuries that, But then again, that's part of coaching. That's why we play 3 running backs. That's why we play 5 offensive linemen. So you can, you got plan B if you lose somebody because of injury. So
yeah, Roman Wilson missed a little bit. A couple of those guys, Zinner started things out. He had that club on his hand. I think Keegan, maybe a couple of the guys inside. I also thought it was key that, coming out of the pandemic, you had guys that you could have for that bonus year, and guys still have some of that, but you get the super seniors, and of a Stardust, being able to have him back. I mean, he's a 6th-year guy. And then, Brad Hawkins played really well for him. He made the big play against Nebraska. He seemed like a stabilizing force, certainly with somebody in there with the experience and the rotation. I know we saw a lot of Rod Moore. We saw a lot of R.J. Moten in there as well. But I think when you've got the experience to lean on, that stuff's pretty good. The quarterback thing, to go back, Jake Rudock as a transfer, Wilton Spade, they had a chance. You think about, 2016 with him in there, but after that they had some injuries. You mentioned Brandon Peters, but they're going in there. O'Korn and Rudock, I think, came from the same high school. They brought him in, so the plan there. There were some injuries. It didn't end up going well, and it felt like with Shea Patterson, you're going out there. Hey, here's a 5-star. You're going to be able to get him, and at the end, I don't know if it was injuries or whatever else. I think that he had a hard time throwing the ball down the field in the pocket. It just wasn't working, and it wasn't meshing up with Gaddis. I'm saying all this to get to McCaffrey and Milton, because both of those guys, in certain ways, they looked at him and thought, man, these guys, these are the kind of players that are going to turn some things around. And then within 6 months, they lost them both. And I thought, wow, here. And to rely on Cade, who did show a spark against Rutgers last year and everything, but I didn't think that he could, I don't want to say he could hold a candle to those other guys, but it didn't feel like he had the ceiling of all those the two guys.
I tell you, Danny, in my opinion too, I've been going to watching Michigan. I graduated in '85, and I've been going to practices, and I watch every game, and I haven't missed nothing in 35 years. Since Jim Harbaugh's been the coach, this defensive scheme is the best. Okay, he had DJ Durkin. He had some good qualities, but I think it struggled against the spread stuff. He had Don Brown. It was good in some deep against certain schemes. I think that scheme was no good versus the Wisconsins and the Iowas, especially versus Wisconsin. We weren't going to beat Wisconsin on a regular basis, I think, with what Don Brown was doing. What we do now, and I keep beating it up and saying it, but I firmly believe what our philosophy is and what we do defensively now, we can line up and play Wisconsin one week, and we can play Maryland the next week in two totally different schemes and make easy adjustments. And our personnel and our scheme can handle it easily. Like, again, we played Iowa today, and we lined up and adjusted, and we defended them well. A lot of coaches, you'll see that they defend certain stuff, but they don't defend other stuff. You have to be and have the kind of scheme and the coach defensively to adjust and stop all 12 people on your schedule. And I firmly believe what we're doing now is the best.
I like it. It's Jim Scarcelli, Dennis Fithian, Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, 42-3. It seemed, it's hard to tell about a Michigan crowd there when you get to Iowa, because sometimes that Iowa maize or yellow, whatever they got going, sometimes you can't tell just by looking into the crowd on what's happening there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we were the ones smiling though. We were the ones standing up smiling. They had frowns on their faces, but
by the end they did, that's for sure. They kept showing that one guy. The one guy was he was great for TV because they kept showing him, and he just couldn't handle it. He was sitting out there in the front row for the Hawkeyes, but it was a good draw for Michigan being able to get Iowa here. You can't do anything about those things. You just go out and play the team in front of you, but they got the victory. And they didn't have the Ohio State hangover. That was one of the things we talked about all week. Would they be able to come out and focus and be able to get the job done against Kirk Ferentz's team? And they were able to, obviously, here in the final analysis by not giving up a touchdown. Pretty good.
Yeah, Danny, I tell you,
Go ahead.
People beat up Harbaugh a lot, and deservedly so. And I have too at times, But I think one of his qualities is he gets his team ready to play every week. they might not, we've lost some games, big games in November, but those are good teams. It's not like we weren't ready to play them. They were just better than us. Their program was better. Their coaches, their players, everything, they just beat us. But I haven't seen a Jim Harbaugh team since he's been the coach that won a big game and then the following week just laid around and flopped around. That's just not what I've seen from him. And I just thought, I heard that narrative, well, the hangle. But let me tell you, man, I was a player who played in these kind of games. And again, there's nobody on that team that has a Big Ten championship ring. You're playing on national television. You're going to fight like heck for your teammates. There was absolutely zero reason to believe that they would have anything but great preparation and great effort for this game. So I didn't believe that narrative at all in any way, shape, or form, that every Michigan kid wasn't going to give his best effort.
Well, we speculated a little bit about whether, Georgia, Cincinnati, or Alabama. We do know the semifinals will be played on New Year's Eve, and one of them will be in the Orange Bowl. That's in Miami. They'll probably play at the Hard Rock Stadium, I think, the Capital One Orange Bowl. And then they've got the Cotton Bowl. Will they play that in the Cowboy Stadium, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
So you're either going to Dallas or you're going to the Orange Bowl. The championship game is, I think, played in Orlando, if I'm not mistaken. I looked at during the game. How do you think it plays out here? So you've got now, today we're into the 5th now. They're not going to play these games until the 31st. Your typical your bowl schedule. Get out there. Next week or whatever, or 2 weeks from now, and go through some of that stuff. Or
this is really important. I was a part of 5 different bowl games, and it was 15 practices back then when I played. I think they still have 15 practices you're allowed.
All right.
And you'll get, they might take a couple days off, and then you're going to have a period. We used to just call it bowl conditioning, where you're just going to run and lift, and then you'll start practicing. And what's interesting now, though, than compared to when I played, was that who's going to sit out? Which Georgia first-round draft choices are going to sit out? Which Alabama first-round draft choices are going to sit out? Now, watching Saban's teams, it looks like most of his guys have always stuck around and played. And most of the Michigan guys have stuck around and played. So that can be a factor. But the way you prepare your team in bowl practices and how do you do too much hitting, not enough, not enough conditioning. You got to be smart with that. Because, you go to these different stadiums, and again, I went to 5 of them, and, when you're young, you just want to go and have fun. You're not playing, and you want to see, go out and party and have a good time. But when you're playing, it's a little different story when you go to these bowl games.
Yeah. And, the one thing, like, I think you get if it's, you're going out to play in the, Citrus Bowl or something, and if guys are going to be top 10 picks, I don't know if I don't think there has been a player that has decided to not play if their team is still alive in the Final Four. So we'll keep an eye on that. Now, some of the coaches, like Brian could have had a shot.
You're right. We haven't seen it so much in the Final Four. Yeah, we've seen it in the other bowl games.
Yep, I'm seeing. I don't know audio if they got the party going on or something here. That stuff's not coming through. So, Scar, it's part of this that I thought was going to be fantastic. Of course, they get the win. The people that went down there, look like good weather to walk around Indy, having a great time. I know I was able to watch this game here tonight. It was fantastic seeing Michigan get to this spot and be in Indy for the first time and, have the championship. The other part here, the Big Ten championship, is now they have all this time. And, it's kind of like the party continues. It's like, hey, Michigan football stays top of mind. It's not about, sure, you got recruiting coming up on December the 15th, the early signing period. And, you still have basketball and everything. But, Michigan's still playing for everything here. And they win 2 more games, they'll be able to do something. And, they're not going to be favored. I think they'll take on Georgia. They'll probably be I don't know, what do you think, 6-point underdog against Georgia. If they somehow won that game, they'd, maybe it'd be a little closer line against Alabama, what we're talking about here. But, they were 8.5 point favorite, or underdogs, I should say, against Ohio State. So, if they play like they did against Ohio State, I think that they could give Georgia or Alabama a pretty good game.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a lot more athletes than we saw today. But yeah, if we can, we've seen those kind of athletes. Ohio State's athletes are just like those other two. So we got to have a great scheme. Players got to play smart. Again, we talk about the importance of this game with recruiting, though. We have got to, hopefully we can turn a couple 4 or 5-star kids. We got a couple scholarships left. I'm interested in if Josh knows how many scholarships we have left. He handles our recruiting, right? I'm wondering, because I think we've got like 18, 19 committed now. But recruiting is going to be huge.
19.
We got to maximize this win in this Big Ten championship. But the downside of winning a championship, Denny?
What's that?
Is now all the teams in the Big Ten East, they're going to spend a whole lot more time working on the Michigan stuff during spring football. You got it? It's opposed to, like, we spent so much time probably preparing for Ohio State during the spring, because everybody's got to beat them. But now that we're the top dogs, people are going to spend more time, because I know as a coach, I always had to beat. There's a couple teams I had to beat, and our whole program was geared around beating these 2 or 3 teams. These 2 teams. So college coaches are really no different. They know to win a Big Ten championship, you got to beat Ohio State, but you got to beat Michigan too. So they're going to spend more time, figuring out how to stop us and how to, beat our defense.
Here's the national columnist, Dan Wetzel from Yahoo Sports. Here's his, I guess, it's already 12:42. Here's at 12:21. He put out what his Final Four would look like. He would have Michigan number 1, and he would have Cincinnati at 4. So maybe there's a chance. Like, I don't think so, but that's what I think that's what he's. He didn't explain it, so I can't say that's what he's thinking. Yeah. With fair, like I said, what I think my prediction will be. Let me ask you a question that's going to be on a lot of people's mind here, and it doesn't have anything to do with the college football playoff. It has to do with, you mentioned in the offseason and everything, Michigan just had a quarterback and Cade McNamara go out there and win a Big Ten championship. And, in the second half, you couldn't have made any better throws. Didn't matter who you had out there with some of those. But you've got the hot shot in J.J. McCarthy, and that he was a team guy, and, they were able to get him out there and everything else. How does it work, Scar? I mean, once this season is over, Jim bring him in and say, hey, we're going to let you guys both compete, and, the best man's going to get the job, come. I mean, how's that going to go down? How do you think he approaches it? What do you think these quarterbacks do? What do you think ultimately happens with the 2 signal callers here? It's in some ways a very good problem to have. I mean, you got 2 guys that are both really talented. One, just took you to the college football playoff for the first time ever.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's something that he's that's the leader again. That's something you don't read in a book about being a head football coach. How do you keep J.J. McCarthy around? How do you keep 2 guys so you have 2 good quarterbacks? And that's is he going to say that it's open, it's wide open, spring ball, we're going to compete again? If I'm a betting man, I think, and I know what I would do. If I'm the coach, it's, he can say what he wants to say, but McNamara will come out the winner again after fall camp. But I would play JJ at least 1/3 of the snaps next year, at least. And if Cade McNamara doesn't like it, tough. You think Blake Corum likes coming out of the game? You think Hassan Haskins likes coming out of the game? You think Donovan Edwards doesn't want more snaps? There's 100 dudes on that team, man. Everybody, they rotate 25, 30 guys on defense. And I think to keep him there, and you're going to have to play him at least a third of the snaps. And I would have no problem doing that as a coach. That's what I would do if I'm coaching that team.
Yeah, well, it feels like a lot of what they did this year was about, moving forward. I don't know if J.J. McCarthy would end up, and the thing about, McNamara, it's not like, last year he was a redshirt freshman. So this year he's a redshirt sophomore, but he gets the bonus year because last year really didn't count. So, he could stay around for a couple more years. There's only a year that separates these two guys. So, at one point, you just got to, and because you can just transfer just like that, you go out there and, handpick your school. I don't know. Like,
no, I get it, man. You look at, a guy like Lane Kiffin, he could go up and snatch JJ in a minute. He's losing his All-American quarterback, and, and JJ could go anywhere.
Right, anywhere.
And start right away. So, in every that's why the kid's got to get an opportunity to show what he can do. McNamara, he's going to play pro football. He's better than what the Lions got right now.
That's not. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. If you just watch what he did in the first half, you say, Cade, maybe some of the things that you said about him during the year here. He's just benefiting from a running game. He's not. He's not really doing a whole lot here, but in the second half, he was really good. He was below average in the first half, but he was above average in the second half.
I'll tell you, Danny, I'm going to cut real quick. I'll tell you something he does really, really well is those bubble screens. Man, our backs are catching that ball in stride. You look at the touchdown that Donovan Edwards threw. That ball was right there in stride, and Donovan Edwards got it and took a couple steps. I think he's so darn accurate, man. And that's one of the biggest qualities I want in a quarterback. Secure the football and be accurate.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a problem that it's going to be certainly talked about the most in the offseason. And we don't know. We don't know what those guys are thinking. And we don't know exactly, what Jim's thinking here. But, being the quarterback and being the main guy to lead a team to a championship with the other things that come along with that, the leadership and then the clout of being able to, to be that guy. I think that's going to mean a lot, when it comes down to it. So, but I don't know, how that ends up playing out. But, they've got hopefully 2 more games to play here, which would be awesome. It's been an awesome ride. The first team ever to come, to do it unranked, but I don't know what you were telling your friends, Scar, like midway through this season, where you're saying, you know what, Michigan, you really like how they're coming together. They can beat Michigan State. They can run the table. They can beat Ohio State. They can beat Penn State. I don't know what you were saying. I expected them to win 8 games this year. So I thought Wisconsin was down. And so when they went into that game, I had Michigan beating them, but they had a close shave against Rutgers, the game that you talked about, where they didn't score any points in the second half. I thought they were going to lose the Nebraska game for about 10 minutes in there. And, of course, they did lose the Michigan State game. The Penn State game, once Penn State tied it up and then got a turnover in, Michigan's own end there. They only had to, I think, go 30 yards. They had a pretty short field there. They could have taken, a bigger lead than they did. But, yeah, a lot to get to the Ohio State game and then have them play this, put up this great performance and then come out today. And I think it did validate them.
Yeah, you know what my concerns, Denny, were at the beginning of the year? When we beat Rutgers last year, I knew in my heart that McNamara was the kind of quarterback I want. He was accurate as hell. He sensed the pocket. He threw it away when he felt pressure. I thought he was good in that game. The thing that I feared with him was how fragile he was. He got hurt in that game. He just didn't look like a fit kid. I was worried that he couldn't take a hit. And I knew we wouldn't have quarterback run in the game like we had with Joe Milton. So I knew he would be accurate. I was worried about how physically tough he was. And then defensively, when Jim hired that coach, I was just praying that he was just going to be a clone of old Wink Martindale over there with his brother. I didn't know for sure what we were going to get, but as we played a few games and what I was seeing a guy that emphasized stopping the run. I could tell right away that was his priority, that we're going to stop you are not going to run the ball on us. Even if we're going to give you short passes, flat passes, you're not going to throw it over our head and you're not going to run the ball. You're going to have to grind it and beat us. So I didn't know what we were going to get defensively until a couple, after the Washington game, that I was sold. We didn't realize they weren't a great team, but I could just tell physically and the scheme we were doing and how our players were playing and that we were going to have a pretty good football team.
Well, they certainly had. You can make the case out. He was the best player in the Big Ten, and he might be the first player taken in the NFL draft. What Aiden Hutchinson was able to do, I don't remember specifically what play it was, but he drove the tackle back into the quarterback to knock us. I mean, you don't see guys doing that very often. I mean, these are freakish type plays. They did everything they could, and then that might have been the one where they also had the running back in, and like he couldn't even get to it. Like he blew past the running back. Was like, next thing you know, he's like, "What was that just went by me?" And so you can have the help, you can slide the protection and everything else, and he was an absolute monster. So that was nice, and you see him just even the difference between having his hand down and being in a 4-3 and a 3-4, just having him stand up. It seemed to, of course, like at this point now, that really suited his skill set.
Well, what they did today, Denny, is again this coach does different stuff every week. You don't know what you're going to get, but this game, he actually dropped Hutchinson in coverage a couple of times. He dropped Ajabo in coverage a couple of times. We gave a look like we had 7 guys at the line of scrimmage, and then he would drop 3 of them. We actually, for the first time all year, we actually rushed 3 guys a couple times. And that's something we haven't done. And see, this is why the guy's smart. If you're gonna pass protect against Michigan, you better know where 97 is, right? So you're going to give a lot of attention to him.
Sure.
What he did a couple times is he dropped Hutchinson and he brought extra pressure from the opposite side of the field. So I was worried about protecting, where 97 is. Meanwhile, we're bringing pressure from the other side. But talking about the time Hutchinson drove that kid back, again, we can't. The next game we play, that when 91 Taylor Upshaw got in that quarterback's face, I was ready to jump through the TV because I got to be honest with you. I don't know how the hell that stuff is being allowed. I mean, I know what my coach would have did to me. My position coach would have had me by the throat. If I just don't understand how that's happening. I wonder how that conversation went with Sean Nua and him when he came to the sideline, because I know what my coach would have said to me.
Well, you know what? To that point, sure, and it's been one of the things that they're emphasizing. They're doing it in the NFL. People are ticked off, not to gloat or get in there and get in the opponent's face. So taunting is what it's officially goes down as. And so you have to have that restraint, and yet you see guys, I mean, they all get pretty fired up, but you can't do it directed at a player.
Yeah,
good rule, you're right.
Yeah.
I have been impressed, and I even saw it today. There's a few times when you're going in, and even you're a linebacker coming in on these blitzes, a lot of times to not get the unsportsmanlike late hit at the quarterback. These guys target the area right there in the chest. They're not going low. You can't go high, and you don't want to get them in the helmet and neck region, but they do an outstanding job of being able to stay away from those penalties. And I know they had the one with Rod Moore, and that would have been kind of an unlucky one. I mean, his head was in there. His head was turning a little bit, which made it look worse. And, there was a chance that maybe he was going to get thrown out of that game, and they didn't do that. But for the most part, man, you've seen these guys with their technique, and, I could tell, man, they are well drilled. I wonder give me a point on that, Scar, and I got another thing that I wanted to ask you about McDonald.
Yeah, Danny, all that stuff is not by coincidence. When you see certain teams and they're hitting the quarterback in the head and they've got the targeting and other teams aren't doing it, that stuff is worked on in practice. And I know all those things are worked on. Nothing is taken for granted. You can't expect a kid to do something in a game if you haven't worked on it. But that's why it bothers me so much to see this kid, one of our players, get in the face of a quarterback. He didn't do nothing to cause there was an incomplete pass, and that was all because of Hutchinson. Yet the guy who was irrelevant gets into the face and gives us 15 yards and keeps the drive alive. I was just furious. And, yeah, I totally agree that stuff should not be allowed. But anyway, Danny, that stuff is coached. It's worked on. It's emphasized as a program. You work on it. And that's why I just can't understand how that got through the cracks. How did that get through? To get into the face of a quarterback. But in general, we've done a good job eliminating the targeting and those kind of things.
All right, Scar, give me a little play-by-play on what you see here. Let me go ahead and see if I can get that video up there. Give me a little. What do you think of the technique that's happening there? Oh, a double. I think you got a double. Gatorade.
Yeah,
Bell. Oh, man, they gave him a pretty good dose there. Woo! There was the blue one. Oh, yeah, double. That's a double Gatorade bath is what you're talking about there.
I've been on the receiving end of that a few times as a coach. And, my guys were smart though, man. They'll have one guy coming from one side, another guy coming from another side, because you're trying to avoid it. You don't want to get doused, but that's a beautiful thing. And personally, I wish we'd go back to the days of putting the guy on your shoulders and carrying him off the field. I think it's a little more respectful, but that's just me. I'm a little more old school. You remember those days, right, Denny?
For sure. I love it.
I just that's just me. I think it shows a little more respect for your coach, but that's what we've been doing for the last 25 years or so now.
Let me give you a couple other things. I wanted to ask you about, the one part about McDonald where I don't know if it was a reservation where I thought, maybe, this was a moment here. Michigan lost the game to Michigan State. One of the big factors of that game was not just the tempo, but the personnel moves, and Michigan State was waiting, and they definitely outmaneuvered Michigan, whatever they were doing. I know there's a different way to go about it in the pros where you're standing there, the personnel swaps. I mean, it's different, how they allow the personnel groups on defense. State was sitting on that. It's credit to them. It was a huge factor in the game. One of the reasons that Michigan ended up losing it, but other teams after that obviously were like, well, we're going to go tempo every game. I mean, I was like, here you go. Michigan's not as good with it, but maybe that it happened against Michigan State and didn't happen later in the season. You learned from it, and they, of course, they didn't have the penalties, the repeated ones that they did against State. So, you can look back on it and credit State for being able to do that.
Yeah, we got misaligned one time, but Danny, when you got to remember, there's a guy upstairs. He's looking at the opposite sideline. He's looking for the personnel that's coming in the game. And sometimes there's an error. Coaches make mistakes too, determining who's coming in the game. Again, the Michigan State game, I think somebody got confused upstairs thinking they were making a personnel change when they didn't, because it was really just there was the one time really bad at Michigan State. It happened one time today too. They got us on a screen pass because we weren't lined up right. We were totally screwed up. And we didn't have a guy. It was a third down conversion. It happened one time today, but I get it. I understand it as a defensive coach. People, the offensive coaches are trying to deceive you, and sometimes they're able to do it, and they make changes, and guys make mistakes upstairs, but you have to try to minimize it, and otherwise you end up playing with the same personnel every down. You get vanilla, you get outmanned because they got 4 fast guys and you got big guys in the game because you didn't change. You know what I mean? Or they got big guys and you got small guys because you didn't change right. So it's there's the two most important things a defensive coach has to do. Number one, you got to line up properly. You know what I mean? If they got 3 receivers here and 1 here, you got to have 3 defensive backs there, 1 here. If they got 7 offensive linemen in the game, then you better bring some 300-pounders in, and you better have your so you got to line up properly. You got to adjust properly. And the second thing you got to do is you got to have the personnel matched. So that's before you even teach blocking and tackling. You can have the best. You can be the best tacklers and pass right, but if you're not lined up right, you're not gonna win. You'll be misaligned. You know what I'm saying? They'll be able to run the ball because you don't have enough people. And we didn't misalign one time today, not one time. No, we didn't have the right personnel one time, but we didn't have one time in this game today where we didn't line up properly. You know, our defensive. When they came out in a formation, our defense lined up properly where our players had a honest opportunity to stop the offense. You know what I mean? Because the coach had them in at least a decent alignment.
I love it. Let me give you some more quotes here. I'm looking at Angelique Shingelis's timeline. She's in Indy. Jim Harbaugh, here's a quote from him just 14 minutes ago. No team I love more than this team. Jim Harbaugh. He says, Jim Harbaugh said the Donovan Edwards pass play has been ready for 7 weeks, and he's never missed it in practice. And so they broke it out here. And here's one too. How about this one?
Denny.
Yeah.
That's the sign of a good program. You give the kid reps. You don't just run it once or twice. You know, you got to work on it. And they've probably been working on it 2-3 times a week, like you said, for 7 weeks. So they had plenty of reps. So the team knew what to do, and there was, no confusion because it was blocked well. The quarterback put it in the right spot. He threw a dime. He threw a beautiful pass. But yeah, that's through repetition and preparation.
They say things about perfect things. That was perfect. Like to get it out there to him and then have him throw it on the line like that with a defender coming in and launching at his helmet and then hit him in stride like he did. Yeah. And
you got to watch. Did you watch Roman Wilson on that play?
I saw him turn up and watch the ball go right.
Well, his job is to be an actor. He's got to be an actor like he's going to stalk block on the receiver, like it's going to be the bubble screen. And normally, I bet if you look at that play, they probably ran the bubble screen a play before or a play or two before that to set up the defense.
Well, you think about it. I think it was 3 plays in a row there. The preceding play that Michigan had, so Blake Corum ran for 67 yards, right? And then Iowa goes 3 and out. The first play, that was on a first down, was a double pass. So, okay. And then the third play they had was the Henning end around because the 3 consecutive plays that they had, that was really the big plays. 2 of them go for touchdown. They really didn't do anything else in the first half on offense. And how about this? I mean, it's a terrible week. I don't know. You watch the news or anything else, you can't get away from it. And, all of our hearts are broken and everything else. But how about this? Michigan scores 42 points in this game, right?
Yeah, and that was the number of the kid.
Tate Meyer, that was his jersey number at Oxford. Aiden Hutchinson said it gave him goosebumps seeing the score. So yeah, I don't know, man. That Michigan had it's like for our state here, it becomes even more heartbreaking and everything else when you see our governor, you see our reporters, you see Their parents are fleeing to Detroit. Hey, they might be going up north, or maybe your cottages. I mean, the whole thing. It's you're lost for words, and you hear me, stammering around about it. But Michigan, they did what they could to represent that, and I think this is always going to be with them as well from that high school at Oxford. I wanted to see Scar, if you had, as you look through this. We've talked about what's up next. That CFP, you get those rankings tomorrow, so we're going to find out about that. When's Michigan going to get those rings, do you think? They get them next year?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think they came around spring practice time, I believe. Takes a good 3 months or so. Yeah, I got I'll bring one out for the memorable moment one time.
Woo! You got one of those rings. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and there's so much work that goes into that, and that will help big time on the recruiting trail.
Well, speaking of that, we're sitting here today. We're now into the 5th of December, so a measly 10 days. It'll be that early signing period. You mentioned 19 recruits, and there's some flipping to go, and some who knows who they can end up pulling in, and how all that's going to work. Everything, it all seems so bad when it goes the other way. Now that they got it going this way, man, it is in a lot of ways pure joy, football wise. So.
Yeah. These, because all these schools that have new coaches, you don't know. I mean, there's so much of recruiting is the relationship, and some of those Notre Dame commits, maybe they had a commitment to Kelly, or maybe them Oklahoma kids. Where are some of those guys? Maybe we could take a look at some of their 4 or 5 star kids, but. Hopefully we can turn a couple kids here now and capitalize this, but just get our team healthy and strong and get ready to play a great bowl game.
Well, Scar, I'm going to give you the last word. I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, and you're going to wish everybody a good night. So I'm going to go first, and I'll just look at this year, a year where I thought heading in here that Michigan was only going to win, 8 games, and would have surprised me if they would have won 7. No. And I remember thinking heading into the season that I looked at, somebody was doing some media member was putting a poll out of some Michigan media, and nobody was picking over 9 games. Everybody was pretty much saying 7 or 8 games. There wasn't a lot of optimism really for this team. And even after they went out there and had the ground and pound against Washington, it was like, you're not going to be able to win football games this way. I mean, it's 2021. You got to be able to put the ball up in the air, and you got to put the stress on defenses here. But, the theme of this Michigan team was running the ball and playing defense, and, it had the old school qualities, and it hasn't been lost on the national media, even going into the Ohio State game, saying, hey, that looked like Harbaugh's Stanford teams, or, now that's a Jim Harbaugh team. And, it was a Jim Harbaugh team, and here he is. And you like great stories. It was a couple of years ago. I remember talking to my brother-in-law. He was so frustrated. He went to Indiana. He went to Michigan. He went to Indiana or Indianapolis. I'm sure he's having a great time there and being able to see the victory. But I remember we were driving a movie, I think on Christmas Day, to go see the new Star Wars and everything. And he just said, the only thing we can hope for now is that he just stays around long enough and somehow, he's just going to turn it around. What a great story that would be. And, here we are. It's a great story. It's a great story for Michigan. It's a great story for the fans. And the great part is it's not done yet. You got till New Year's Eve. What a great night that's going to be, day, where you get another football game and everything's on the table. You win one more, you get into a championship game. And, so it's been a fabulous ride, unexpected. And it's been fun working with you here We'll continue to do that. Scar, give me your final thoughts here on Michigan winning the Big Ten title and what kind of season it's been to this point.
Yeah, it's just beautiful because, Jim is a friend of mine. He's a teammate of mine. So I've wanted to see him win in the worst way, just like all of us. But, when they showed those seniors pictures at the end, remember I think they had like 10 of them. They had Ross and Hayes and for some reason they had 10 guys. There was about 10 of them there. And they were great leaders. We had great player leadership. I know as a guy who, at least at Michigan, there were some guys that weren't great senior leaders. Some of the teams I played on as a young guy. And I saw, and some of the guys in my class, we saw different groups that had really great leaders and other groups that didn't have great leaders. This team had great senior leadership. So the impact of that can be, generational. The guys behind them are seeing how Hutchinson led, how Ross led, how, Schoonmaker and Hayes and all the guys they listed there. So that's what was going through my mind when I saw those seniors pictures there, that, hey, the guys below them know what it takes. When you go through, and people don't talk about these things. When's the last time we had a Michigan football player, drunk, fighting, doing stupid stuff? That stuff isn't by accident. It's not by coincidence. It's great leadership from a coach, but also great leadership with the players. Because, if we'd have lost one of those guys because they did some stupid off the field, and I've been on teams that had that. So I want to really compliment the seniors for providing that great leadership. But we got momentum now, Denny. We got momentum as a program, and we got to capitalize on it. And the fans got to get behind our program. And I want to see Harbaugh extended. I like to see the recruits see that this guy is the coach. There's no more doubts, and capitalize with recruiting here as we go forward, and hopefully have a great run here in these bowl games. But I'm fired up. All the Michigan former players are fired up, and we're all in, man. Go Blue.
Great job, Scar. We'll talk to you this week. Thanks for staying up so late with us.
Go Blue. It's all fun with you, Denny. All right, brother.